Layoffs, AI, outsourcing, automation, entire job families slowly disappearing, inflation, Fed policy, recession, salary deflation, you name it. There's a lot of reasons to be fearful, and especially if, let's say, you got a job anytime between the 20 teens and 2022, or maybe you're recently in the job market now and you haven't been for a long time, or if you just kind of got caught up in the hype of the job boom. So this video is for you, but probably not for the reasons that you might be expecting. I honestly think that we need to treat this depending on your situation. For me, I was laid off, and I've been in the tech industry for 23 years. I had to go through a grieving process. As part of the grieving, you go through the stages, anger, denial, depression. And ultimately, though, if you want to move past and move forward and get back to having a productive life and having job satisfaction, you need to move to the final stage, which is acceptance. So that's what this video is about, is accepting the truth and the realities of the current tech job landscape. And hopefully by the end of the video, I will have convinced you to remove this one word from your vocabulary completely. Remove it from your thoughts, remove it from the way you talk, as a sort of a shameless way to try to get you to watch to the end of the video. Hard truth number one. So I walk into the office one morning on a Friday, and I go into the shared office area that I shared with a few other coworkers and my boss, and it was just my boss sitting there. And I said, "Oh, where's Patrick?" And who happened to be a good friend of mine and also a coworker who got me the job. And my manager said, pulled me into an office and said they were laid off, along with half the company. And of course, that was, it's a jarring experience. There's fear, there's confusion. It's kind of shocking if you've ever been through it before. This isn't a detailed layoff story. I've already kind of shared my story in another video. Shameless plug. You can go watch that and help me increase my watch time hours. This was in the year 2000. So this wasn't, recently in the last 2 years or 4 years. This was going on 4 years ago now. So the hard truth number one is that layoffs are a reality. They're going to happen. Companies grow and contract. The economy grows and contracts. Markets grow and contract. Demand shifts. So companies don't always guess exactly how many employees that they're going to need for the future. Sometimes they miscalculate. Sometimes they're caught surprised. I wish, layoffs weren't a thing, but they are. And so the best thing to do is kind of let go of the fear, know that at some point you probably will be impacted if you're in technology. And, you're never going to layoff proof yourself, but you can keep your skills sharp. You can pay attention to the trends of the market to make sure that your skills are still in demand. You can do a good job while you're at work, and you can build and maintain your network. So that's the best thing that I can advise for layoffs. And the second thing I'll say about layoffs is that they are designed to be surprising. I wish that they were told that they're going to be laid off, but given enough time, to transition their responsibilities or to start networking, start brushing up their resume. We would love that to happen as the people impacted by layoffs. But that is a very rare thing. It's probably not how it's going to happen. So rather than be offended by that, look at a company not as a person. It is a profit machine. It just cares about the formula. The people I work with are humans. They don't want to lay people off. But the company itself is amoral. It's not right or wrong. It's just profit and loss. Hard truth number two, decreased time to irrelevance. So I'm about 4 years into my career as a software engineer. I start to get kind of the itch, I guess. You want to go out and see what else is out there, what other kind of jobs are out there. And I realized that nobody really wanted to hire Windows desktop software engineers anymore. Companies were moving their desktop applications to the web. Something I thought was a hot kind of market within just a few years was no longer desirable. And that was kind of my first taste of how quickly a skill can kind of move towards irrelevance. So in tech, the time to irrelevance is only going to decrease. Maybe I'm not saying this the best way, but we've seen this in other fields and roles like agile coaches and scrum masters, which are not as in high demand as they used to be. Data center technicians, when companies started moving to the cloud, you had fewer and fewer companies that maintained their own data centers. Related to that, like server administrators and some of the larger companies, even where technical product managers or project managers. I don't remember which company it was now, but it may have been Meta, where they cut out the TPM completely. So roles that are the organization starts to perceive as being purely overhead also are at risk of becoming irrelevant. So keep your skills sharp. Pay attention to what's going on in the industry. You don't have to, spend nights and weekends reading blogs and white papers, but just kind of pay attention to what's going on and where the trends are. I've been caught unaware, but I've also been able to pivot my career out of what I saw was sort of a field of lowering demand. And that was part of me being an agile coach and a scrum master, and just seeing that companies weren't as excited and didn't want to really invest in that capability anymore. Tech jobs aren't like other disciplines. If you went to medical school to be a podiatrist, chances are you can retire as a podiatrist. Or other examples like being an electrician or being in the trades, where the tools of the trade, the knowledge and the skill sets have kind of been established. It doesn't necessarily mean there's not innovation in those areas, but a person can invest a lot of time and energy into learning those skills and knowledge and gaining experience, and then be able to expect that those things will carry them through their entire career. You can become an electrician and retire from being an electrician without having to kind of relearn your entire skill set. So in technology, it's just not that way. Now some areas are going to experience more change. Let's say software engineering, if you're an actual programmer, things change very quickly. Now, I don't mean to say that if you're a software engineer and you were, writing code in Visual Basic and didn't develop some sort of transferable skill set. You absolutely have. And the same thing in technical product management. You've developed the skills of planning, of facilitation, of coordination. And those are also fairly timeless skills that you can use in a new job. But other types of hard skills are what shift. And so in tech, you need to be ready to kind of rebrand yourself and shift your skill set and your career so you can stay employed. The third truth I think we're on now is companies are amoral. And if the formula becomes out of balance, they have to adjust. They don't exist solely for the purpose of improving the lives of their employees. The good companies will invest in employees, and they actually do care about your well-being at work, but ultimately for the purpose of increasing your productivity. So that's just what a company is. It doesn't necessarily think of you as a human being from a company perspective. Again, thinking of the company as more of like a machine. You're an expense in the expense table. You're a row on a spreadsheet that has a cost. And we can remain employed, or we can remain with that company as long as we're providing enough value to justify the cost. To that end, the company is always going to be striving to do more with less. This is the push for automation, the outsourcing, trying to look for cheaper labor. If they can find a way to do your job faster, better, cheaper than you can do it, or even just two of those things sometimes, cheaper is usually one of them, then they will do that. Talking about AI just briefly, company leaders are starting to get, or have been getting, really excited about this promise that AI can make workers 25, 50, percent more productive. I've seen corporate goals in technology that state we want 25% of all code to be written by AI by the end of 2025, for example. So they're going to find ways to do more with less. That is the name of the game, because the competitors are also going to do that. And the profit motive is what drives these companies. The last thing I'll say about a company being amoral is the unequal exchange of value between a company and an employee. The company extracts some of the value that you're providing in the form of profit. They're returning that profit. Either they're reinvesting that into the company, they're paying their executive salaries, they're increasing the shareholder value. If you're in a private equity situation, they're literally just taking that and handing it to the private equity firm, right? Because that's why they exist. They give the company some money and they want more back. They do that by extracting value from the work you provide. So in return, they're not giving you all of the value that you're providing. In return, they're giving you a perception of job security, the biweekly paycheck. That's what you're getting from a salaried job from a company. That's the main benefit. As far as protecting yourself sort of against this truth, one is, we've already talked about it, but it's accepting it the way it is. You're not going to change the employee-company relationship. You just kind of have to accept it and be cool with it. But the other thing, which is really empowering, is you have the ability to develop new skills and secondary, you've heard of secondary streams of income, and to kind of protect yourself against possible loss of that regular salary, and maybe who knows, if eventually replacing that. And in transparency, that's one of my main drivers for creating this channel. One, I want to help people orient to this crazy industry. I want to do my small part in fixing the industry. And two, I hope that at some point it turns into something that could also be another stream of income. The fourth hard truth we need to confront is that your job really is just a job, and that's actually okay. I think in the last, in this boom period that I talked about from the 20 teens through 2022, we came to kind of expect more from our jobs than I think was healthy. There was just so much money flowing around. The companies were kind of creating these, they had lavish, office spaces, and some of these big tech companies with insane compensation packages. And we made the job responsible for more of our well-being than we should. Now, some of well-being is from your work, and you make good friends at work, and you take pride in your job well done. But relying on your boss to be your therapist, or having, thinking of your work team as a family, I think we're starting to remember that that's really not a healthy way of looking at it. I've never laid anybody off from my family. Maybe they've wanted to, cut me from the roster, but To use the word family in a job context is you see this unhealthy meshing of the two worlds. So then, obviously, when we have this kind of massive, fast-paced disruption in the job market, um, there's a feeling of dislocation for a lot of people, especially people who started their careers during this boom period or who are just now re-entering the job market. When your job is such a central point of your life and your well-being, but is also something that is in the hands of somebody else, then you're putting your well-being in the hands of somebody else. And so I think the advice here is kind of obvious, but it is put your job in its place in your life, and it isn't the number one thing. Hard truth number 5 is that we have likely already seen the best tech job market. It is probably in the past. Now, this is mostly speculation because I can't see the future or anything, but the crazy tech job inflationary period of a decade is kind of in the process of bursting. I don't trust the numbers that are coming out. So even, it's like the government is basically gaslighting us into believing that the market is healthy. So if you look at the numbers, it shows that we haven't actually been losing jobs and unemployment has ticked up, ever so slightly. But anecdotally, we look around us and we know that that's not actually true. So I think it's reasonable to expect a lot more moderation in tech job growth versus these massive hiring sprees that we've seen in the past. So what that means for many of us is, 5C of this hard truth is supply and demand. If there are fewer jobs and more people, then we need to expect salaries to continue to deflate. I have no idea how far that would continue to happen, but I think we all need to be prepared to be flexible in our pay for the next number of years until it kind of recovers and maybe starts to get back on an upward trajectory. Hard truth number 6 is remote jobs are no longer just the default. We can't just expect all companies to offer a fully remote option. And we have to expect, if we're looking for remote employment, that we're going to be competing with the other 1,000 people who also want a remote job. At least anecdotally, in my experience, most companies in my area that were full remote 2020, 21, even into 2022 are starting to bring people back. They've moved back to hybrid or even staying remote, but shifting their hiring to refocus on their core hubs. If they had offices in a few cities, they're going to start to shift their hiring back to just those cities so they can start to bring people back into the office. And this one in particular for me, I'm trying to not feel anger towards, because I am just so much more productive at home, and it's just so much better for my life and my specific circumstances. The companies care about overall productivity of the organization, of teams. And, we can be living our best lives working from home, which personally I do. But that's not why the company exists. So if they feel that having people together co-located, it results in more productivity, then that's what they're going to do. And you really can't even fault the company for doing that. Now, is it true or not? That's a whole nother story. And it kind of brings me to my other couple points I want to make about, I looked it up. The average age of a CEO in a company is 54 years old. So these aren't digital natives that are running companies. These are people that came up, working in war rooms together, in cubicles, and they have this kind of perception of what productivity looks like is busyness, right? It's people working together around a whiteboard. It's a lot of that togetherness. And the other piece is most CEOs, they weren't software engineers. They weren't business analysts or automation engineers or technical product managers, or some of them were product managers, but many were not product managers. They don't actually know what it's like to be in the throes of software development, that how hard it actually is, how much focus that it takes, how we actually do best with large blocks of uninterrupted time, focus time by ourselves or maybe with a small group. The role, we kind of know that the job can be done pretty effectively full remote, but it's just not a perception that is shared by the people running companies. That sucks. I wish it was different. And you might be like me, and I was really so excited, in the Great Resignation time frame when it looked like the employees were kind of in the driver's seat finally. But that was a snapshot in time. It was good while it lasted. And so I think job seekers now need to put that behind them. And I had to do this too. Although I was lucky to find a remote job, I had fully prepared myself to go back into an office at least 3 days a week. The final hard truth that I want to discuss is maybe the hardest, and it's that nobody is coming to rescue you. Think about coal miners, taxi drivers, bookkeepers, print journalists, call center reps, jobs like retail, sales, and even tech jobs that you don't really see a lot of anymore. Like they still exist, but like database administrators, or like we talked about data center admins, mainframe developers. What do we think happened to those folks? Nobody came to bail them out. Some people lost their jobs and then just had to retire early. The people that were able to remain employed were forced to reskill. And yeah, there are some sort of government programs for helping people skill up. There's unemployment, which we know is not even really enough to survive on, hardly, without major disruption to your lifestyle, like selling your house and car and things like that. I say this with care, but nobody actually cares. Think about what you did when these people were losing their jobs, when factory workers, when jobs were being moved overseas. Did we stand up and protest, and riot the injustice of these job losses? No, we didn't. We never really thought that these kind of times will come for white collar jobs. So don't expect the world, the government, to care all that much about your job security. We have to do that for ourselves. So after that glowing ray of sunshine, of positivity, what do we actually do about all of this? What do we do with this, once we confront these truths? And I'm no psychologist or certified life coach, so I'm not really qualified to give you advice, but this is what I've done. The first thing was I had to give myself time to process this, and accept some of these truths and detach myself from myself from them emotionally. So they are kind of like is what it is type of situation. The other thing, and these are pretty obvious, but really get your finances together, like for real. I went through and canceled like 90% of our subscriptions. I'm selling one of our vehicles. And we just like really reduced our spending down to kind of the core. So we stopped eating out so much. We've gone back to doing a lot more cooking, and just prepping for more lean times ahead. The other thing I've done is being very intentional about what I let in. So what content I consume, versus just scrolling through all of the horrible things that are going on and all the different various bubbles bursting and real estate, and just there's no point in swirling around in all of that. So kind of stay connected to what's going on in the industry, but know that content creators and the news and media, fear gets clicks. Divisiveness gets clicks. And then finally, as I told you in the beginning, what I would say, this one word to remove from your vocabulary, and that word is should. And essentially, what I mean is nothing should be. And when you say things like, well, the government should raise minimum wage, they should provide more employment benefits, they should stop these companies from laying people off. My 10 years experience should be worth more in the market. This recruiter should call me back. The hiring manager shouldn't ghost me. All of these shoulds, and they pile up. And what we're basically saying when we say should is that in order for me to feel fulfilled in my life, the world needs to exist in a very specific way for me. And it sounds so obvious, but just pay attention to those types of thoughts that you're having and kind of replace them with some of these truths. It's okay to say that recruiter ghosted me and that didn't feel good. To say that they shouldn't, it's almost like internal whining about the situation, and it really doesn't help, and it keeps you emotionally attached to the things that are happening in the world that are out of your control. Last thing I want to say is just avoid this trap. And that is, there's a fine line between calm acceptance and cynicism. And so, for example, the difference is, yeah, I was laid off, but, oh well, it's not like I was going to retire from there anyway. It's not like anybody can retire from any company anymore. So, doesn't matter. I'll just find some other job that I'll work in for 6 months. And, I guess that'll just be how I make it through retirement. So the pretense of acceptance, right? Yeah, so what? But you're convincing yourself to not care. You haven't really processed that negativity yet. Versus actual calm acceptance of the way things is, yeah, I was laid off. It was painful and it happened. And so I'm going to try to learn from that experience. I'm going to assess what the market's asking for now. I'm going to look at my skill set, and I'm going to start networking, and I'm going to get back to work. Thanks again if you got to this point. This was a bit of a tough one, but hopefully it helps you to have a better, more rational and realistic picture of the way things are currently, so that then you can adjust and take action. Likes and subs really do help small channels if you enjoyed it. If not, dislike, comment, please. I just want to provide good, helpful content for you to get us through this tough time. And remember, just because software is broken doesn't mean we have to be.